Go back. Okay. Trying to use slides for the first time. I wanted to make a silly opening. This kind of goes into the whole thing Callie was talking about everybody making these posts that are really controversial, trying to just drive traffic, but it really just kills your brand. Right now, if you look out on YouTube, there's all these tutorials on, oh, how I quit this job and how I moved to this job. Um, it just kind of reminded me of something that happened when YouTube first came out, where if you were a junior engineer, mid-level engineer trying to find a path into senior, it was just filled with all these people from Silicon Valley and from the big tech, FANG corporations, who had this skewed perception of what coding really was and what corporate and enterprise level coding was. And so I thought this was kind of funny. So I like to make memes and Photoshop stuff. Um, I'm Jeremy White. I've been doing this for 16 years professionally. Uh, Graduated from North Carolina State University back in 2008. Anybody knows who their history in US. That was a great time to be trying to find a job and get your feet when everybody was crashing down around you. Quickly lost my first job right after the market crashed. Scrambled, found my way to a big company down in South Carolina and kind of started making my way from there. So if you want to talk about imposter syndrome, just lose your first job. That'll permanently etch into your brain that you are not a useful member of your team until you have to beat it out of you. So that's one of the reasons why I like to give talks like this. It's one of the reasons why I'm into mentoring, is because at a very crucial time in my career, I felt listless. I didn't have any direction of where I was supposed to go. I went from working at Papa John's and Domino's since I was like 14, 15 years old, directly into software. And when you're used to people telling you what to do, you sit down in a seat the first time somebody's going to pay you to write code, and you're waiting for somebody to tell you exactly what to do and to kind of pre-chew your food for you. And that's just not the way that this career works. So I try to work with new people. I like to work on any onboarding that I can get my hands on at any company I'm on. I'm really passionate about not letting the people that I can influence ever feel like they don't know what's going on, because it just kills you inside. You'll get into big, deep depression spirals. You'll get imposter syndrome, and you can be one of the most, proficient people on your team and still mentally feel like you were just barely scraping by, and it really ruins your work-life balance. So that's my goal, working with Callie, volunteering on some of these mock interviews and things like that, just trying to give back a little bit. I mentor on the side through a company called American Corporate Acceptance. They do volunteering programs for veterans who are trying to move into the civilian workforce. So I try to hit some IT mentees through there. And that's what I like to do in my free time. So that's why I'm here talking to you guys, just trying to kind of knowledge dump on you and hit some word vomit. See if there's anything you can glean from it. And hopefully you guys have lots of questions. Just interrupt me, say however you want. I can only see like one picture. So Callie, if you don't mind, if you see somebody raising their hand, just yell at me. Um, like I
Will
said, this is
do.
just a quick PowerPoint I threw together. Just AI generated it, so it might be kind of silly, but it'll keep me from wandering too much. Yeah. So 16 years professionally. I've started at small startup corporations all the way to 3,000 big, huge enterprise corporations, back down to smaller startup, into another smaller startup, back into another 3,000. So I've kind of bounced around to that big and the small. The big and the small. It's given me a really good understanding and an appreciation for doing things the right way versus fighting against dogmatic beliefs that there is a right way, because there really isn't a right way. I very much believe that if you're on LinkedIn saying no Coke is the best or no Pepsi is the best, it's simply because the tool that you like has solved the problems that you've seen, and the tool that the other person likes is solving the problems that they've seen. Nobody sees the same problems, and so you're going to have different things. That's one of the things I learned in my career, was you think there's a right answer. There's never a right answer. Everybody above you in your organization, everybody below you, everyone around you, we're all just kids who are playing with live ammo, and somebody let us write code. Um, Nobody knows all the right answers. You're going to meet some truly brilliant people, and yeah, they might have all the right answers, but 9 times out of 10, we're all just Googling our butts off and
Yes.
trying to just get an idea of where we're going and keep patterns in our head, so that when we see it the next time, we kind of know where we're going. So yeah, 16 years, I've been doing it for a while. I've been trying to climb my way up there. And one of the things I found was that a lot of companies don't have a ladder or any sort of roadmap for you to follow and to know, where am I supposed to be in my career? So what you'll end up doing is you'll just throw yourself at it, and you'll find yourself working 50 or 60 hours, being busy, killing yourself, and not making any movement in your actual career, because being busy is not being efficient, and being busy is not being good at your job, and being busy is not going to get you anywhere most of the time. So you need to work efficiently and make sure that every step that you're making, that they're paying you to write code, make sure that you're building up who you are, because the job is not who you are. The skills and what you bring to the table is who you are. So I recently heard one of my product managers say, you should be updating your resume every 3 to 6 months. And if there's nothing to write on that resume, you find another job, because
Ooh.
you haven't learned anything in 3 to 6 months. So you're kind of stagnating. Do some self-reflection, see if you're just kind of in a rut and you are not stretching yourself. Or if you really are just kind of shoved into a corner in your job and there's nowhere to go. You have to advocate for yourself. You're not going to get anywhere if you just sit there quietly. You can be loud and you can be helpful. The helpful people that are quiet aren't going to get raises, and the loud people who aren't helpful aren't going to get raises. It's the people who are loud and the people who are helpful that get the raises and get the promotions. That's why you'll sometimes hear, oh, it's a popularity contest to move into management or the C-suite or executive level or anything like that. That's not the case. It's just you're reaching out and you're making these relationships cross functionally in different teams. And that's what you need to be heading for. So when you sit down day one, I know some of you are probably looking for your first job. Some of you might have some background in software. Don't think about what's in front of you. Think about everything you can touch in your day. If you're lucky enough to sit down at a keyboard and somebody's about to pay you 8 hours a day to work in something that you've been doing for free or paying to do, use that time efficiently. Don't sit on Reddit at work, not because you're worried about, wasting the company's time. If you don't have any work to do and you can do your whole work week in 10 hours, knock it out and then go learn something. Go spool up a side project. Go find something on the roadmap at your company and stretch yourself. Um, Everything that I have here that I'm about to tell you is all for me just reaching out and grabbing work. Nobody's putting these things on your plate. Nobody's going to go tell you, hey, I need you to go learn this. A good manager will do that. A good lead will do that, but it's very rare. Most of the time, everyone's flying by the seat of their pants. You've got to go grab the work where you can grab it. So this is a little bit of my background. I'm spiraling a little bit. Um,
You're doing
I
great.
yeah, I like to focus on the leadership side of things. I kind of just fell into leadership, being a team lead, being a tech lead. I can talk a little bit about those two things a little bit later. I I've worked mostly in what I consider like transaction processing and reporting. I worked the majority of my career, the big chunk was with a point of sale company called GK Software. And before that, we worked as a tiny little, a little scrappy company that's kind of attached code to the SAP Triversity point of sale. We weren't really part of SAP, we were our own company, but somebody figured out, hey, there's this transaction flow from all the different registers. It's open. We can grab it. We pay licenses to grab this. And if we grab all these transactions, we can do things like add loyalty on top of the point of sale, or change the way the receipts look, or do a buy online, return and score e-commerce sort of thing, or reporting or cash management, all sorts of other stuff. And then we also did payment processing, so the pin pads. And um, I kind of found myself pushing further and further back towards the data pipeline, where we were just scaling very quickly and we were starting to have more problems. And we had this kind of dying custom report engine. I got, I'd like to say I got stuck. I kind of whittled my way in there because it was interesting and I like to play with it. And then I popped up 8 years later and I'm really good at reports. And so that's where I moved into my current role, working for Insight Software. They work for, or they produce applications for the Office of the CFO. And historically, the Office of the CFO doesn't have a suite of tools. If you think about most things in this country or in this world, you kind of have a set of tools and they all work together because companies have worked to put them together because that's most efficient. But the Office of the CFO is really disparate and discrete what they need to work on. So what Insight's doing is they're trying to kind of conglomerate and build these different applications on top of a platform layer, which just means there's a bunch of data moving underneath. And that's the team that I work on currently is the platform team. So we work on the data processing. We do a lot of what Callie was talking about in AWS, where you're having to launch the pods. I spent the last 3 years cozying up to the DevOps team because that was a big black hole in my career, was just not really knowing how the cloud works. You just kind of picture the cloud and things get launched and you're good to go. Cloud's a lot easier than it seems when you get underneath. It's just a computer up in the sky So every piece of a computer that's on-prem just exists up there, and AWS and Azure have just come up with some really cool tools to make it useful, make it more efficient. I have been using .NET as my daily driver for over the last 10 years. I started in Java. NC State University kind of they went hard on Java. They slipped out of C++ when the big Microsoft antitrust lawsuit back in the early 2000s came out. So we all popped out with a head full of Java. And Raleigh is really big about Java, whereas like the West Coast is, or sorry, on DC you get a lot of .NET. The West Coast you see a lot of Go and Python and Angular and React. Raleigh is just a huge Java mecca. Um, so I got lucky enough to get to slide into a .NET role, and somebody gave me a little bit of a chance, and I've been doing it ever since. And I don't really want to go back. I'll do Java if I have to, but I like .NET. It's fun to play with. Um, yeah, I already talked a little bit about leadership and mentorship. I like doing that. I don't want anybody I can touch to feel dumb or to feel like they don't know what's going on. And then I also like working on operations. So you'll see something as you go through your career where a manager will say, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing this and this and this," and you're going to feel really, really busy. And somebody's going to say, "Why are you doing that?" You say, "Well, I have a problem," because most people are in this to solve problems. When a customer has a problem, you want to jump on those bugs, you want to jump on those tickets. But sometimes it's not engineering's job to do that. You have a support team, you have professional services, you have all these other teams that are supposed to be doing it. And you might find your other engineers saying, "Well, why didn't support handle this?" And sometimes you might find an understaffed support team, or sometimes you might find a support team that doesn't want to put in the effort, and they'll just kind of throw things over the fence to engineering. But most of the time, if you start to feel like the engineering team is doing a lot of support work, it's because there's a lack of training and a lack of like, cross the fence handshaking.
Hey, Jeremy,
And
can I
yeah,
ask a
go ahead.
question?
Sure.
What is a support team?
Oh, okay. Yeah, good, good question. That
Because someone
she's
actually
yeah,
asked me about this today. They were like, "Hey, can
yeah.
you refer me to this support engineer position?" And I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, and that's Callie kind of makes a good point. It's you're going to get a lot of people who say things and say terms and you don't know what it is. Stop them in their tracks, clarify so that the next 40 seconds of them talking isn't just blank space. The support team is the team that's involved in supporting your actual customers. So they pay for a license. The the code is written. These are the people that, at the tier one, they're just fixing passwords, they're working on base configurations. Maybe tier two, these are the people that are trying to figure out why your data is not right. They're hopping into the database and they're playing with stuff. And then tier three support, it usually bleeds into engineering or is engineering. So you have this support team whose job it is to field the hundreds of tickets that are coming in
Okay.
and to make sure that engineering is out of production. They don't want to be in production. Um, the bigger your company gets, the more you want your engineers away from customers, because it gets really expensive for those engineers to start intermingling with your
Oh my
customers.
gosh, this support engineer thing sounds amazing. I wish I had them at my old
Yeah,
job.
it's really hard sometimes to find good support engineers because they have to be good at a few things. It's kind of like finding somebody who likes being their own mechanic, where they like being dirty, they like the stuff that's the nitty gritty, and it gets hard and there's no right answer, and they just want to chew on it like a dog with a bone. That's the best support team you'll get, is they'll just want to learn. So operational excellence, I like working with my support teams. I like working with usually they have a counterpart like business analysts or a content team, the people who are in charge of the business side of things. And then you have engineering and product, and they all need to work together and have agreements on who's doing what, because all of your managers are going to get mad if you're working on a thing you're not supposed to work on, but all of your managers will also get mad if you're not reaching out to the right people to get the right answers. So it's this balancing act, and that balancing act gets a lot easier when everybody's on the same page and understands where your job ends and where their job starts. Instead of hearing, "Oh, why didn't they do that?" You'll start hearing, "Oh no, don't worry about that, like I'll get that, just give that to me," because you're better at it, you're efficient, and you're getting paid to do it and they're not. So if it means support's working 50 to 60-hour weeks because they don't know how to do something, it's way better if I go to my manager and say, "Look, I think I need some training." I set up a couple of training sessions, I get some good Confluence or some wiki pages out there, and I show them how the products work and do some basic troubleshoot. It's a little bit documentation, but then as these tickets come in that are getting sent over to engineering, where my manager is saying, hey, engineering shouldn't be dealing with this. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go show support how it should be done, give them the training materials, give them a troubleshooting guide that says, if you see this error, here's how to fix it. Something like that. It goes a long way to building up your support team where all of a sudden these hundreds of tickets a month are down to dozens because they're not even getting logged because they're solving them before they get logged. Um, I knew that our current team had finally kind of gotten their head up underwater when we went from day one, every customer we were onboarding, we had like 200 customers at the time. We knew the name of every customer that came through because they all had tickets. And then eventually, a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, I said, such and such, 300 customers. And somebody said, no, 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 we've got 500 customers now. We had onboarded 200 customers without anybody on the engineering team knowing it because we had done it. We had finally documented our support team. They're amazing. They stepped up. I constantly call out the 2 or 3 guys that are just bending over backwards to learn the systems. They went from knowing nothing to knowing the systems just as well as the people who built it in a course of 6 months. And that's the kind of operational excellence you have to have where people want to be good at their jobs. And if you can go find those people and work with them, you will be a 10x developer just because you're helping other people. Everyone talks about being a 10x developer because you're the brilliant guy who can throw code, and there are code ninjas out there, but most of the time you're going to be a 10x developer if you can just learn who the right people are and set everyone up for success. I kind of went on and on about that one, but I'm big about processes. There's usually 3 things wrong in a system, right? It's a people, it's a process, or it's a program. And the process is the cheapest one to fix. Replacing people is expensive. Replacing programs are expensive. Replacing a process is very cheap. It's just paper or a website. So if you can find a problem and fix it with a process, do it. And
Hey,
everybody's
Jamie.
usually on board. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupt a lot with
No,
questions.
do it. Do it.
How much do you feel like skill wise at work, your job is like technical skills versus like soft skills versus a mix? Because I see a
I
lot of people like so focused on the technical and they like throw out their past career. And I'm like,
yeah.
no, your past career has a lot of helpful skills. Well, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
So I think that there are the type of people who really want to work in a FANG type of organization. And in that one, you need to go hard into your technical skills because
Okay.
you're trying to just fight through layers and layers to be the guy, right? You're like, look, I'm good at all of this stuff because they need to hire the best of the best of the best. I don't enjoy that as much. I live in the realistic world where, most of the problems that hit you don't have anything to do with technical things. I can go weeks without running a line of code if we are really underwater and you're putting out fires, because your job as a senior engineer, as a lead, is to write as little code as possible that's not specifically being paid for by the company, right? A customer's going to have a problem. You want to solve that with a configuration or a process. At last ditch effort, we'll say, we'll go add this feature, because every line of code you add to the system should be on a roadmap somewhere where they've said, we are losing sales because this banner isn't blue or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so the product team has decided, you guys really got to make this banner blue. Then you write some code. Everything else, just try to, fight it. So I'd say as you get closer to a lead, usually it's 20 to 40% of your time is going to be replaced. Instead of writing code, you're going to be doing the people stuff. You're going to be sitting in meetings, you're going to be writing documentation, you're going to be figuring out requirements and things like that. So the amount of code you write will kind of fall, and eventually you'll hit this breaking point. And I'm kind of at that point right now where I've got my feet in 2 roads, where you can be an individual contributor. That's somebody who just, nobody reports to you. You're an individual person, or an IC. And you've got the other route where you're starting to have people directly report to you, where you're in management, or maybe sometimes you're an architect or a principal or a VP, and you kind of have this like side little thing and you're not quite in the management tier. But either way, you're working with people more and more, and you have to decide where you like your career to go. You'll kind of know if you're a people person. You'll start to like the people problems. You like working with customers, you like working with product, and that's something you have to learn early on. Do you like those things or do you hate them? If you hate them, don't go that way. Just go hard individual contributor and be the best of the best at everything you have. um, I like the people problems. As you can see, like, I'm talking in circles for 20 minutes. This isn't usually, I joke that I'm not the kind of dev that you just slide a pizza under the door with a stack of requirements and I'll get code out, because I know those guys and they're amazing, but I'm not that kind. I want a problem. I want to be able to break it down, and I want to talk to people and try to solve it. in that place. So
Yeah.
it kind of depends. It's going to be a sliding scale. I think nobody writes 100% code. You need to work on your soft skills. I just did two interviews for Callie with two of her people, and I think that they were just amazing how great their soft skills were for being so early in their technical career. And then I thought about it, it's because they're not early in their careers. There are things you learn as you get older, how to deal with people, how to read people, that you really have to learn and internalize to be good at software at an enterprise level, because you're going to be working with multiple teams. And there's a term, the brilliant jerk. You don't want to be the brilliant jerk. It doesn't matter how good you are. Nobody will want to work with you and you will get fired. Um, Unless you work at a FANG place, and then they'll probably give you a division. I don't know.
Stop. That's funny.
um, so I started to kind of put together what you want to build your career on, and I've started talking. I've kind of just spiraled into what I was saying already. I know we're about to run out of time. I just talked for 20 minutes.
You're
Um,
great. You're doing great.
a lot of this that I'm talking about, you want to build your career in little pieces. Like I said, you're getting paid to be at a keyboard for 8 hours a day. You'll only be coding for a couple of hours. So you've got to choose what you want to do at that time. I think watching people code publicly and coding publicly is one of the best things you can do. Pair programming with people in person, that's another thing you can do. Working on design sessions. Um, I think even when you're a junior, stepping up and saying, "Hey, can I take a crack at it?" when there's something new, even if you're wrong, if you're wildly inaccurate and you don't know how it's supposed to work, try to solve something on your own. Don't go write a bunch of code. I just mean go on a whiteboard somewhere and try to solve it on the whiteboard and think, "Hey, I think we should add this new feature in this way," and build it out, and have a senior come tear it apart and tell you why it's dumb or why it's amazing and you're a savant. Who knows? Do these things that all of these creators are talking about and start building up some of those soft skills, and do different things. Try to learn what you like. I originally in college focused on human computer interactions. I love the idea of the efficiency of mouse movements and things like that. And then I went into the corporate world, and I ran from the front end as fast as I could because I just do not like front end work. Not my favorite. And I found that I just like the back end work. I kept trying to go to the front end because mentally it feels like it's the important part. It's the business side of things. But I just like the problems in the back end, and you'll learn, but don't silo yourself. Ask, push, and reach as much as you can to touch as many things as you want. Everyone should be a full stack developer. I don't believe in front end or back end developers. I just don't. I think you'll be a bad front end developer if you don't know how the back end works. And I think you'll be a bad back end developer if you don't know how the front end works. That goes the same with DevOps. I have some suggestions if you guys go a little deeper after the AWS thing, because you kind of have to decide in the same way. How do you want to approach a DevOps? Do you want to just be aware of how it works? You can design and architect things and then put it up there and then hand it off to DevOps so they can do the deep scripting. I call it, opsy doodle stuff. Just say, "Hey,
Opsy
Rudy,
doodle. I love that.
I need some opsy doodle stuff where you know where it's supposed to go, but you don't have the memorization, or no one's paying you 8 hours a day to go memorize that stuff. So
Yeah.
stop before you go invest all that time. Really know where you want to go." That's kind of why I'm trying to make a focus on pushing yourself out a little bit, like stretching your bubble a little. Don't go run in one direction and just memorize how to build a Go application from ground up. Be familiar with it, be aware of it, go figure out what problems it solves that another language wouldn't solve, and then you have it under your tool belt. You don't have to have 6 years of it to go work in a Go shop. At a certain point in your career, hiring manager is going to look at you and be, "Okay, you've been doing it for 10 years. You're solid." And then you're going to find that most of your interviews are about culture and work ethic, how you work as on a team. And nobody really cares about your technical skills because you've been doing it for 10 years. Of course you can code. I have gotten roles where I didn't write a line of code. I could have technically not known how to code and still have sat down day one at that job. Um, I think a little bit of a hole in an interview, but it was also really trusting in that good hiring managers know that good developers are good developers. It doesn't matter what the language is. But when you're starting, the language is very important because they want you to have a good understanding of where you're going. Um, so you kind of got to pick and choose what you want to go spend your time in. I think the program that you guys worked on, I don't know if everybody here did Callie's recent workshops, but that was a good way of doing it, where you kind of touch everything on the stack, you get a good understanding of the problem, and then just cycle from there. Keep building more and more apps so you start to see the flow, the full end-to-end problem. And then you'll start to see pieces of the SDLC while you work with that. One of the people I interviewed asked, how do you deal with the front end and the back end separation? And the answer is, you don't. It's hard. It's hard to build a front end and a back end and then put them together. You have to really work hard to make sure they work in lockstep. And until you've tried to do that, you'll gloss over it in your head and you won't know how to size tickets. You won't know how to gather requirements. Um, I know we're starting to run out of time here. I'm going to try to skip ahead of just keep talking. This is a lot more talking than I thought I would do. I was like, oh, I've got like 5 minutes to say. Um,
You're good. I
yeah.
also don't have anything to do. So, I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
you don't have to stay past 9, but there's also no like super strong cutoff.
Okay. I did want to make sure I left some room if anybody has any questions. But so I've kind of talked about the foundation. The difference between a junior and a senior is just you've seen some of these problems before, so you're not trying to do things for the first time. You'll see the shape of things. It's kind of like the first time you've messed with a relational database, you get an idea of what all relational databases are going to do. So then you get an idea of how NoSQL works. And you're like, okay, cool. I know how that's going to work. It's a flat file system. Okay, I know how front end language is going to work. I know how back end language is going to work. And then eventually you'll start seeing these problems. And then your junior devs underneath you will say things like, hey, I've got this problem. And you're like, they should have something, something. And you'll tell them the goober that they're looking for. You won't know the exact name of it, but it'll be just enough they can Google it and find the thing they're looking for, and then they can move on. But they're not banging their head against a wall trying to solve a problem that's already been solved by a framework. Um, that's the move into senior. And then the other thing you get good at is understanding a problem when it's given into you. You know, somebody says, hey, we need to do this feature, and it's like a movie where you can see Iron Man or Tony Stark when he's blowing things out in that 3D, that you can mentally see, okay, it sounds like we're just making one screen, but you see the pieces and you can understand, okay, it's going to take a couple days for this part, a couple days for this part. Oh, at last time we touched this set of code, it took us 2 weeks. So you can go back to your manager or product and say that'll take 4 weeks. Off the top of your head, you can size a ticket. That's the kind of thing that seniors need to be able to do, is just recognize patterns and kind of move forward. But the other thing is taking the lead before you're being asked to take the lead. I know somebody's a senior dev when I can see a ticket come through and I don't even have to think about assigning it to them. I know they're going to be able to get started on a ticket without me needing to kind of pre-chew anything for them. It's fine if you need to be pre-chewed. You should always, ask, hey, you've worked on it before. What is this taking a touch? But a senior dev can basically handle any ticket in the queue and make some progress and know how to go find the people who know the answers if they don't know the answers. A junior dev isn't going to be able to, it's going to be like looking at hieroglyphics most of the time. And then once it starts looking like words to you, you kind of know you're making it with the mid-level. And once you can think about who's the best person in your team to handle a ticket, that's when you're starting to hit that senior level. I talk about building your network because I think that's really important. Is you shouldn't bend over backwards so that everybody thinks you're a doormat, because then they'll come to you too much. I've been told by managers, don't let nice guy Jeremy come in that room, because nice guy Jeremy will come in and he'll say, oh yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We can do that. And then nice guy Jeremy's working 80 hours a week for the next 3 months because I signed up for a bunch of stuff. You can't do that. You have to eventually learn that saying no to somebody is saying yes to a priority for your team.
Oh, I
But then
like that.
yeah. And sometimes you do want to be a good citizen though, and you have to understand that 5 hours of your team's time can really save hours and hours and hours of the daily stress on the support side. So things like adding visibility metrics into the logs so that the support team can see what's wrong in the customer site. Think about stuff like that. That's when you're building your network. It's not about saying, hi, this is who I am. It's about being that good citizen and making everyone else's job easier by doing your own job. You're not doing their job. You're not doing a job you're not being told to do. You're just being so good at your job, you can help everybody. Helping product get metrics on who's using the site, helping support get metrics on what's broken with the site, helping content or business analysts know, hey, we already do that, because they want to do something and you have an understanding of what the system's capable of. That's what makes you a senior dev, being the guy in the room that can answer the right questions. Trusting yourself, I think that's a big thing. A lot of us get imposter syndrome and we think, oh, we don't know what we're talking about. Trust yourself. Like, you do know the most of anybody you know in your area about certain things, and speak up when you think you know that. Don't be afraid to be wrong. And if you ever find yourself afraid to speak up in a meeting, you've got a toxic culture and you just need to bail. That's really what happens. If it's you and you don't feel comfortable talking, that's different. But try to get to the point where you feel strong enough to say, hey, I think we should do this, and get slapped down and get told by your senior dev, oh, that's a silly reason because you're not thinking about scaling or whatever. Start talking out loud, answer and work with everybody you can. That's how you start to build that technical leadership. Take control, or reach out for things you've never touched before. Oh, hey, I've never worked in the database super deeply. Can I take this database? One of your manager will, no, we got to have this sprint. We've got to have it this sprint. So he'll say no, and he'll give it to somebody who's better at it. But sometimes they won't, and you'll get to go spin your wheels on it for a little while, and you'll learn something from it. So try to do something you can't do. In the core of it, just remember that every day you sit at that keyboard, they are paying you to do something that you once paid to do. And it's up
It's
to you
so
to make.
cool, right?
Yeah, it's still, after 16 years, it still blows my mind that people pay me insane amounts of money to do some. I almost dropped out of school to work at Papa John's as a manager, because
That
I
does
didn't
sound
realize.
tasty.
Yeah, I didn't know software engineers made money like that until one of my friends got an internship. He's like, "Yeah, I'm making like $13 an hour." I said, "What? I'm making five. What is this?" This is back in the Stone Age. And then strategic decision making. When the people outside of engineering start recognizing you, that's when you're starting to make good moves, and that's when you're useful to the business. That takes time. That's not something you can brute force. That's understanding the domain that you work in, and that's why job hopping looks bad at a certain point. I think there's two camps. People say, "Oh, you're going to job hop, you're going to make a lot of money." You are, but it's going to be very hard to advance on the strategic side of things and to be trusted if you have switched domains. I'm working in shoe sales and I'm working in this and I'm working in this. You're not going to have a good understanding of what's going on. The example I use is when I first started working in point of sale, I got one of my features, I knocked it out. I was like, "Ooh, I did it. I'm ready to go. It's Friday." And then I threw it to my lead, and he's like, "Cool. How do returns work?" And I'm like, what do you mean returns? He's like, "It's a point of sale. People return things. Did you test returns?" No. What about exchanges? What about post voids? All these things that he knew because he'd been in the domain, I had to learn. And you lose that every time you switch domains, and you have to build it back up, and you lose a lot of trust in the people above you, because it's just the way things are. You can't brute force domain knowledge. So you have to choose and pick your battles. Eventually, yeah, switch jobs, get that bump. But stay as close to your domain as you can if you really want to make the strategic jumps. If you're all about the tech, job hop all you want. Just chase that paper if you really want to. Um, and then deepen the domain knowledge. That was the next place I went. Work on your problem solving, work with product, start to understand, try to go into as many meetings as you can to understand the decisions that the business is making. Because as much information as you can bring to your team to decide between A and B is what's going to make your team great, because someday somebody's going to say, we need to do A, and you're going to be the guy in the room that knows B is the right answer, and you're going to save yourself 6 months of time, and your company is going to have to pay to build A and B. And that's a great time. You're going to feel really great inside when you're the guy that does that, but that's hard to do. And you have to be in a lot of meetings. You have to listen to a lot of things. You have to care about a lot of things you don't want to care about. But at the end of the day, they're paying you to do something you paid to do. So give back a little bit to your company, stretch yourself, and try to understand, why is the business making these decisions? What makes your customers happy? Why are these things being added to the product? Because that makes you, care about your job. You're not there to be a code monkey. If you want to be a code monkey, go find a bank somewhere and just clock in your 8 hours and walk out. But if you really care about software and you want to make an impact, then, stretch yourself. I think that was it. I did it. 36 minutes.
Yay. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Do
Yeah.
you want to take any questions
Yeah.
or?
Yeah. 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 I've got time.
Okay, so let's do 2 questions and then we'll wrap it up. So who has a question?
I have a question.
All right, Daisy, go for it.
Thanks.
Is Daisy breaking up for anyone else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Daisy, can you type your question or try it again?
Am I still choppy? Can you hear me?
I hear
Now
you
I
now.
can,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So if I was to shoot you a message on LinkedIn, like let's say maybe a company I was interested in or a
Mhm.
code that I was having issues with. Are you open to like even answering back?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I'll put my LinkedIn in there. Like I said, it's easy to find me. I'm just Jeremy White. I'm on there. Anybody who sends me a contact, I'm going to go ahead and answer your contact. I've been working with a guy, I don't know him, and I've been answering some of his design questions for the last few days. He's trying to build a MVP, and he's like, how do you want to do authentication this way? How do you want to do the authenticate? I've been Googling stuff for him because I
Love
like
that.
solving problems like that. And so, yeah, if you got problems, let me know. I really like the mentor thing, and I like to build my network of people because the best way to get roles in this industry is to have people. My friend called it activating his network. You know, when you're actively working at a company, you can't activate your network. But getting laid off or actually just flop that green banner on there, and everybody you've ever known will be, advocating for you. That's really right now in this industry the only way to get out there. So yeah, sure. You ask me a question, I'm going to answer your question.
thank you so
Yeah.
much.
And like I said, I'm going to put my calendar in there too. So if you ever need 30 minutes, please be nice about it. Don't go blowing up my calendar. But if you really need 30 minutes and you have, 10 minutes of questions, just throw a Calendly link on my calendar and I'll meet with you guys.
Lovely.
Like,
Yeah, and I'll post it.
Is
Oh,
he
sorry.
gonna
Go ahead.
in the chat, the calendar, like how to schedule the 30 minutes session? Can you drop it in the chat?
I'm going to have Callie try to send it. Is there a way for you to send it to everybody that was on the invite?
Yep, I can send everyone an invite, or I can just post it in our Coding with Callie Slack channel. Is that fine?
That'd
Okay,
work well.
so I'll
Yeah.
post it to the Slack channel. The Slack channel is linked by Christine up in the chat. If you're not in the Slack channel, go ahead and join that, and then I'll put it in there after Jeremy sends it to me.
Like, perfect.
All right, one more question. Who's up? Thanks, Brian.
No questions? It was easy.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much. This was super helpful. And everybody, I will see you next week again at 8 p.m. and we'll have another guest speaker. Do I remember who it is? No, I do not, but I will email you guys and post about it on LinkedIn. All right. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks for letting me word vomit.
You did so good, Jeremy. It was very insightful.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a great job.
Thank you so
Jeremy.
much. Thank you.
Have a good night,
Yay.
everybody.
All right,
Bye.
bye, guys.
Thank you, Callie and